part 2 of my backstory. I'm going to talk a little bit about my time in Korea. I think I should start with my arrival, which for me was like heart-wrenching, because I remember arriving there and just being so lonely and afraid. And it was this whirlwind of get off the airplane, get onto a bus, go to the main bus station in central Seoul, and then get on another 7-hour bus ride. And I didn't know at what point I was going to have to get off the bus, but I was operating on pure faith that this bus driver was going to tell me that this is your stop, and they did. Someone helped me, and I got off, and it was in the wee hours of the morning, and it was their end winter, but their end winter is freezing. And dark and cold and lonely is not a good mood for me. And I remember being picked up by one of the teachers, and he was really lovely and very helpful and showed me where the school was and took me to get something to eat. And for now, I can't remember what the restaurant was, but I do know that they liken it to the Korean version of McDonald's. And if I remember, I will put the name of the restaurant, fast food place, that we stopped at for my first meal in Korea. I think it was chicken nuggets and wedges, potato wedges. And I remember meeting one of my students that I was going to teach in that restaurant. The teacher was like, "Oh, you're going to teach him. This is going to be your new teacher." On that first night, I remember sitting in the apartment, one-room apartment, and really just regretting this decision, because I was like, what am I doing here? It's freezing, and I'm gonna have to get up and walk to school in the cold, and I don't know anybody, and I was feeling sorry for myself, really. And I just got on the phone with my sister, and she talked me through it, and I fell asleep and woke up the next morning and headed to school like I was supposed to. And I was afraid all the way up those 2 blocks, and I arrived there, and I just kept arriving every day and doing this thing. And even though I was scared and I didn't know what I was supposed to do and everything was unfamiliar, I just kept at it. And I think one of the funnier memories was in this apartment, there was like nothing when I arrived. I was expecting there to be some things in there, but there was not a cup, and not a plate. There was a cast iron frying pan and 1 spoon. I actually have a picture that I'm going to try and insert here of my very first meal in my apartment. It was what would be like chocolate Chex cereal and in a frying pan, and there's a picture of it on my lap. It was like this really like either sad moment or total comic relief, and I in the moment thought it was really funny. Like, I went from this place where I had my whole life set up and established, and kitchen crockery and cutlery and all of these things, and now I'm eating out of a frying pan in the middle of Korea. I didn't have the level of clothing needed to function in this environment, but I put all my clothes on. I think I had like a pair of stockings and a pair of leggings and then a pair of pants and then a dress on top of that, and then this jacket that did nothing, really. And I must have looked ridiculous, but I was freezing. And in that same week, one of the co-teachers took me to a store to get a jacket that would help, and a blanket, because it was so cold. The game changer for me was a lady that also worked there, but she only came in on a Friday to do native English teaching, and she was super prepared, and she came in there and she just helped me out, and she had resources that she was so willing to share and pointed me in the right direction, and she helped me go and do shopping for the things that I needed and set up my own little home there in South Korea. And forever grateful to her. I will not say her name because I have not asked permission. But she just provided the starting point for everything and helped me along, and I'm very grateful. In I think the first 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I had cleaning product, but I had no experience with this cleaning product. In South Africa, you just have handy and sunlight liquid, and that is like the basics that you need to clean everything. And that's what I was familiar with working with. And I used this Clorox stuff, and I didn't read, well, everything was in Korean, but I didn't necessarily think to find the small English print to read. And I think it's bleach, if I'm not mistaken. And I closed the door to the shower when I was cleaning it, and I'd inhaled this bleach, which landed me in hospital. I can laugh about it now, but at the time it was super scary, and they had to put like base in my lungs to get rid of the acid, and it was a very scary time, and she was super helpful. And only I would go to a foreign country and nearly poison myself in the first 2 weeks, like only me. But now I can laugh about it because it's been God and I've survived it, and it's just one of those things. And now I'm so super careful about all the cleaning products that I use here, to the point where we've found a online shopping company that ships South African products here, and my husband very graciously buys me all my South African products so I can clean my house. I'm so afraid of American products. So yeah, that was like one of my first experiences. In that experience though, I can speak on how amazing the Korean healthcare system is. They were Googling on the internet and trying to figure out what I'd done, and then they were administering the base through some kind of, I'm going to say humidifier, but it probably wasn't. They were telling you what they were doing on Naver Translate, and it was just super reassuring. Even though they didn't understand me and I didn't understand them, there was a bridge in between, and they were giving me my patient care. And I was super grateful for that, because there's nothing more scary to have to go and seek medical help in a foreign country and you don't understand how any of it works. And now I've had to do that twice, in Korea and here in the US. And it is super scary because everything is different. And sometimes you don't understand the nuances of how things are done. And at first you end up making lots of weird ass mistakes. It was like, in South Africa, we don't have someone that takes your case information prior. You just go in and say, I'm going to see my physician, and then you sit and you wait to see the doctor. No one takes your blood pressure and your whatever. The doctor does all that checking. And so I assumed the doctor was seeing me, and it wasn't the doctor. Which is funny. Anyway, that's the story for another day. What else can I tell you? The rice. I measure my time in Korea by one rice paddy across the road from the school I taught. I watched that piece of land from when I arrived and it was frozen in icicles to when the ice melted and the farmer and his family tilled the land, and then they planted these little shoots of, rice plants. And then the rice grew into this beautiful, luscious green, field. And then they harvested it and dried the rice, and it was this beautiful cycle. And I got to watch it grow every day on the way to school. And every so often when I felt like I could see a difference, I would take a picture so that when this whole thing was finished, I could just post what had happened in a year. And I found it so calming, and it was super beautiful. I've never been able to do that before. Or I'm sure I could have done it. I just really didn't have the time, or like the calmness in my mind to like, hey, this is happening, take notice. I was always so busy everywhere trying to do everything all at once. And now I had this little special moment with growing rice, and it really was like, it marked my year there.
Look how beautiful my little rice paddy is. The shoots are so small when first planted, and then it grows into this luscious green field. Magnificent. They had to install nets to keep the birds out, otherwise it was going to be a feeding fest. And then towards the end of the season, the rice starts to dry out, getting ready for harvesting. And in a day, it is all gone. Magical.
So I had this mini love affair with all Korean cuisine. I remember discovering all the little restaurants. The one thing I love about Korea is they have specialty restaurants where you go to the restaurant and they only cook one thing, but that one thing is amazing. And there was this lamb restaurant which had like little pieces of lamb on like a stick, and then they had like this rotating system on each table. And then you had like, you could have sides, sometimes there were sides, and your soju or your soft drink, and then the lamb roasted and you ate it as each stick was finished. It was the best restaurant. I think my husband and I went there multiple times. And it is one of those places we will revisit if we go back to Korea. It was so good. And then one of my personal favorites was a restaurant that sold like, it was like chicken and cabbage, and I think it was yams, and it was just fried on a gas wok of sorts in front of you on the table, and it was amazing. It was melty and cheesy, and the chicken was always so perfectly done, and the flavor profiles was amazing. Another one I discovered right at the end of my stay in Korea, and I wish I'd known about it before. It was this place that created. There was a place that made stew almost, with like bones and vegetables, and you could sit around the table and the pot was in the middle. I absolutely love that whole thing. And Korean barbecue, oh my gosh, I just love the grilling the meat in front of you and all the little sides, and I miss that. I'm gonna have to find a restaurant that does that here, so that I can enjoy it again. I think I fell in love with the Korean palate, but it took a little bit of time. In South Africa, there's a very distinct line between savory and sweet. In the Korean cooking, I found that they mixed sweet and savory together. So some flavors I totally just didn't get. But towards the end there, once you're exposed to things, you get used to it and you start to enjoy it. And one of those things was the kimchi. At first it was so spicy, and I'm Indian. But then again, I don't have a high tolerance of spices. I've never had it. Shameful, really. But the kimchi was super spicy. But by the end of the year, I could handle it. And I just thought that kimchi was amazing. When I felt like I deserved a drink, I would go to the local GS24. I'm trying to remember here, GS24. And I would get myself a little bottle of this blackcurrant wine. I think it's blackcurrant or blackberry. I'm unsure. But it was lovely. I think I even brought my mom some home so she could taste these things.
So this is my food journey in Korea in snapshots. Every picture represents a meal I had, a memory I created with that meal, sharing it with someone. It is a mishmash of an emotional memory and a taste memory, and I really enjoyed experiencing the food culture in Korea because it expanded my taste profiles and what flavors went together and which flavors I could pair together that I would not normally have done and it be enjoyable. It also allowed me to enjoy the simpler things that were different, and I enjoyed every single bite. And I also enjoyed the ability to go back and just reminisce. So thank you for listening and watching. And please leave a like or a comment below.